Hey, I'm Alex Radical from Board Game Co, and today I'm reviewing Faeries and Magical Creatures from Forbidden Games. Faeries and Magical Creatures is a 2 to 4 player polyomino action selection game in which players are trying to score as many points as possible, primarily through filling out this grid with various polyomino pieces and pathways, but honestly, a bunch of other things as well. In the game, what you're going to be doing is you're going to be taking one of 5 core actions. Your turn is to select an action, and then everyone else gets to take that action as well. Usually you get first dibs on things, making some actions better than others, and then also you can play a card. Players are going to have a starting deck of 4 basic cards, but they also have the opportunity to add more cards to the deck that will eventually cycle around, giving them more options, more abilities, more ways to score points, but you're going to start off the game with a very limited deck and actually not even cards in your hand, which is a little annoying, but that's a different conversation. We'll get to that part later. But that's the basic idea of the game. On your turn, you play a card, if you have one, and then you define the action that can be taken. Now the actions, there's 5 of these over here, we're going to go through them one at a time. We have Gain Trust, which allows players to take a token from the supply and place it onto one of these sections of the board to be able to get a degree of area control. That's going to have area control scoring at the end of the game. It's one of the ways you score points. For example, in the Earth sphere over here, red has the most cubes, and so red is going to score points equal to the total number of cubes in this region, which is 8. Meanwhile, blue and green over here are tied for second most. Second most gets points equal to their cubes only in the game. And so that's going to be the way these score in the game. So that's going to be the Gain Trust. But the additional aspect of why you want Gain Trust is the first player to 10 cubes in a region is going to be able to take one of these, adding it to their board, and these operate as a scoring multiplier for the various pieces around them on their tableau. That's going to be the first action, Gain Trust. The second action, and to be clear, when you do the Gain Trust action, I take a cube as the person triggering it, I place it in one of the boxes, and then every player going clockwise can take the exact same action. And again, I can play a card, but only I can play a card. On your turn, you can play a card, but on anyone's turn, on your turn, everyone's going to take the action you selected. We have Build Garden. There's going to be polyominoes in play equal to the number of players in play, and you're going to choose one of these polyominoes, you're going to place it onto your board, and they are double-sided. One side is the path, one side is the actual garden. You can choose which one to place, but the problem is your path is going to start off on an edge somewhere, but as you place pieces, you can only place your garden, or your gardens only score if they are touching a path, versus other path pieces will have to go ahead and connect to your starting path. But gardens, while they can go anywhere, they'll only score if they're touching a path piece, so you want to try to create a little bit of a network here, because your gardens score, but you need your paths for your gardens to score. And gardens score equal to the size of the gardens. That's going to be a 5-point garden right there. And if it had one of these, because if you had 10 cubes in Earth first, then if you had this touching any pieces, any eligible scoring pieces touching that double their scoring. So that's going to be why you want that. So getting a bunch of garden pieces, sure, you might have gotten 8 points for having Earth over here, but having a whole bunch of garden polyominoes on your board is going to give you extra points. This is also where it's worth noting that as you place things down into your board, you can get extra bonus points for the corners, or you can put cubes down onto the board, or you can go ahead and draw cards. So you have different options as far as the board and the benefits you get there. Then we have Befriend a Faerie. That's going to let you draft a new card. There's going to be cards equal to the number of players plus 1. You get to go ahead and choose a card, and every player going clockwise chooses a card as well. The last card is discarded, and the market is refilled. Similarly with polyominoes, the market's refilled as well. Then we have Helping Hand, which is play a card from your hand. Now you might remember, you get to play a card regardless. This is giving you the opportunity to play an extra card. If you choose Helping Hand, you get to play 2 cards, and everyone else will get to play 1 card because they follow your action, but they don't follow your single card play you get. So Helping Hand would have you playing 2, everyone else playing 1. And then lastly, we have Call Faeries. That lets you draw cards from your draw pile into your hand. You start the game with a pile of cards, but no actual hand, which feels like a rules mistake, honestly. We'll get to that later. But Call Faeries lets you draw cards. That's going to be how you replenish your hand. You can discard cards, and then go ahead and draw cards, discard a card, and then go ahead and draw cards into your hand. Those are going to be the 5 core actions in the game. The cards themselves give you extra actions to do, extra things to influence all the stuff. Just to give you an example from these over here, this one's over here is going to score 2 victory points per nature card in your hand. So if you can build out a nice handful of nature cards, you'll score a bunch of points from those. You can get large scoring things over here. Kelpie, remove a kinship token, that's these, from any area, or move 2 into the nature area from other areas. This is particularly helpful because if you're someone who has control, like right now over here, blue has control, so blue's currently getting regions from those, but I can go ahead and grab 2 from the region where I already have the least, because these 2 points are going to favor the blue player. I can grab those, moving them to nature, denying blue points, and making it so that I'm getting points. Or alternatively, you can move other players' cubes from areas where they have control into areas where you have control to take away control from their regions and give you more points because they're in the regions you control. Cube movement is a huge part of the game. game. Also, there's a blue card in this mix. That should not be there over there. But control of the board is going to be a huge part of it, and cards that manipulate the control of the board is going to be a huge part of the game. But these will give you extra cards. They'll go into your discard pile, and as you draw cards, will cycle into your hand so you can take additional actions. But that is the core idea of the game. Take 5 actions. Your actions are going to be placing cubes into the board to be able to get these or just to get control for points, to be able to build polyominoes into the garden, to be able to draft new cards, to be able to play extra cards, or to go ahead and draw cards from the draw pile into your hand, rinse and repeat until the game is over. That is basically, and the game, there's a few game end triggers. There's the polyominoes running out, the cards running out, going through the last of all these, or players running out of kinship tokens will trigger the end of the game. And that is how you play Fairies and Magical Creatures, which means it's time for the review, starting off with ease of play, which ease of play is actually really easy with a large caveat. The rulebook is incredibly short. Let's go ahead and show you the rulebook over here. This rulebook, very accessible, very short. It's like 5 pages of very easy to read. You can read this and understand how to play in like, well, you can read it and sort of understand how to play in 10 minutes. It's a very quick rulebook. Unfortunately, it's quick to the point of costing degrees of just uncertainty around a lot of things. This is a game where you'll either have to take to the forums to try to find out what some rules are, how do tiebreakers work and things like that if you have equal numbers of stuff, or just be comfortable house ruling. You kind of have to pick a lane in this one. You either have to assume certain things or go to the forums, because the rulebook is very light. And honestly, by the way, that rulebook, however short it is, most of it is flavor text. The actual rules, like, it's a lot of flavor text. Like, let me show you it again, because it's actually really a lot. Over here, we have like a 5-6 page rulebook. This section over here, this is all flavor text. Here's the action. Over here, this is flavor text. Here's the action parts. So half of this rulebook, as short as it is flavor text, and flavor text could have been replaced by examples or clarifications or other things that would have helped you understand the game. So the ease of play is pretty easy, with the catch that you either are guessing rules, making up rules, or checking the forum for rules as you play. As far, and the game time I'd say the box says 30-60 minutes, I believe, and I think that is optimistic. I think this is probably a 45 to 60 minute game in general, and I think even 45 is ambitious. While the game is very simple, it falls into that Forbidden Games trap that they've had with games like Lizard Wizard, Raccoon Tycoon, Mosaic. All their games in general theoretically are very fast moving as you take quick actions, and practically speaking they tend to take longer than the boxes suggest. I don't think this overstays its welcome too long at an hour, but I think it definitely is more in that hour range, possibly even longer depending on your player count, and I think that 30 minutes is a very optimistic number. As far as what I like, don't like, and can see others not liking, starting off with what I like, which is, to begin with, the game is simple to teach, and it isn't that long. It is, again, the lightness of the game. I do think maybe being 15 minutes faster could have benefited the game, but I don't think it overstays its welcome too much. It's an enjoyable, it's fast, it's a decently fun deck building with a lot of fun cards, a giant deck full of cards over here. We have tons and tons of cards, all with unique abilities. I think every ability is unique. Some of the art is replicated. I think every card has 2 versions of the art, but the abilities are unique, which is actually a little confusing. There's going to be a whole lot of things I like here and a whole lot of but actually kind of details here, because having duplicated art with different text is a drop confusing. Either just go with the same text or mix up the art or something. It's not the end of the world, but if you get used to thinking that the Kelpie means one thing, you'll be disappointed when you find out that that art can mean 2 different things and you kind of mentally connect to the 2. So small nitpick there, but the deck building itself is pretty fun. You get a lot of cards, a lot of abilities, and many of the actions, not all of the actions, but many of the actions are compelling every single round as you try to think through, do you want to go ahead and build a polyomino garden over here? Do you want to go ahead and put tokens on the board? What about the card draft and how those actions are going to affect others, because the actions will affect others as well. They'll have the opportunity to get things as well, or do you want to wait for somebody else's turn because eventually someone's going to the card draft, so maybe you'll get all your cards that way, and you should just focus on helping hand to be able to play and cycle your cards as fast as possible. The game has fast moving turns, a bunch of compelling options, a fun polyomino grid and puzzle to like navigate out here with additional bonuses for placing things down, as well as good deck building. It's light area control with manipulation that actually matters over here, because it does matter how you move things around and rearrange things. It is a fun little puzzle to go through on your board. So it's just a lot of simple, accessible, easygoing things that all come together in a fairly nice package with a bunch of caveats, because there are a bunch of caveats. I enjoy this game, make no mistake. We'll talk about it more in final thoughts, but there are a bunch of things that just take away from an experience that could have been so much better. The game weight versus length. Again, I don't think it's not exactly the right fit. I don't think an hour is too long. I think this game can drift more than an hour, and for the lightness of the game, can overstay its welcome by a bit. I think that could have been cleaned up again a bit. There could have been a few ways you just adjusted the game length, a few less cards, a few fewer polyominoes, adjusting it based around the player count. There are things you could have done to make the game length a bit shorter, a bit more appropriate for the experience. I don't think it's terrible. I just think it could have been dropped better. Actions frequently feel imbalanced in the game. These pool of actions that you take on your turn, well, some of them are better if you're going first, some of them are better if you're going last, arguably. Things like gaining trust and placing a kinship token, ideally getting that action from others is better, because if I place my token first and you can respond to what I'm doing, arguably going last is better for that one. Versus things like building a garden or drafting new cards, then you get first selection, so those are just better in that sense. Playing a card is completely neutral. It's not necessarily better or worse to play a card, and again, because of the nature of card play, if anything, it's better to have it happen last. And so the actions are wildly inconsistent in terms of when it's actually better to take an action. I would say most of the time, the most efficient actions for you to take on your turn are drafting polyominoes and drafting new cards. Eventually, someone's going to have to break from that pattern so that you can do something else, but it is very different and strange in terms of the strength of the actions and how they are relevant to other people's turns. It doesn't feel balanced around the actions. Speaking of balance, the cards don't feel balanced either. These cards in the game just do not feel balanced as far as how good they are. Some of these cards can possibly give you 12 points and a really solid move in the way it combines, and others feels like you have to work twice as hard to get half as many points. The cards don't feel balanced. Now, to give credit to that one, that kind of does drive the action when you draft cards, because if you have a pool of cards here that aren't balanced, you should take that action. Except it's not a sliding down row, it's a whole new pool every time someone takes the action, so you didn't always necessarily have the agency to plan or predict around things, so it still ends up feeling just unbalanced as far as the cards, as far as the actions. I think in general that the decks, as well as that, the decks don't intermingle a lot in the game, meaning you have these 5 different factions, Earth, Trolls, Fae, Beast, and Nature, and there's not a lot of interplay between them. They mostly operate independently, so you kind of want to lean into a faction to a large degree, but I think that the main issue I have is going to come down to the fact that the rules aren't great. They're lacking in examples, lacking in clarity. There are some things that just straight up aren't there. There are many cards that will have questions or clarifications. You'll just, again, have to go to the forums or house rule, and then just a large lack of balance around how things are operated, as well as, what was my initial complaint? My initial complaint I was talking about was the rules. I think the rules and the examples. There's a bunch of small little things that just add up to an experience that makes it feel like Faeries and Magical Creatures went far enough in development to become a finished game, but it really feels like this could have been a prototype. It feels like there's just rough edges on this one. It's a good game, I have fun with it, but it feels like there's rough edges on this game. As far as I can see others not liking, a lot of the cards, like I said already, will need rules deciding. For me, I don't mind that as much, because, meaning I have a bigger problem with the balance than the clarification issues. I don't mind making house rules around, how do ties play out, how did that card operate. I don't mind navigating as far as trying to figure out what makes the most sense within the state of the game, with the, I guess, the irony that many of the decisions in the game don't feel like they're crafted with what makes the most sense in the game, so maybe I'm wrong on some of those things. I'll also say the game definitely does have take that to it. There's a lot of navigating these cubes over here, so a lot of work is spent putting the cubes in the right places, and then players are going to mission around with the cards they get, and that might feel frustrating. There's a little bit of take that in the experience as far as the navigation of that board. I'll also say, by the way, getting these tiles, insanely powerful. You get one of these and place it around 3 tiles that are going to be 15 points, or whatever it is. You can double that 15 points and just get a lot of points there. Again, lots of potential balance things, and I always hesitate to use the word imbalanced or overpowered, any of that. I think my bigger issue is I can't speak to overarching strategies, but I can literally point to certain cards that just feel crazy, and the actions, it just does not feel like all actions are created equal in this game. Some actions are better to be the receiver of, some actions are better to be the provider of, and if you all figure that out together, then you're in a bit of a stuck position, and if you don't all figure that out together, then the players who figured it out are probably winning the game. As far as final thoughts on Faeries and Magical Creatures, despite the issues I have with this game, and I do have issues with this game, I still have fun with it. It is a 3.5 out of 5 for me, because I actively enjoy this. It is a fun game. I like the way everything combines. It's fast moving, it's light, it's accessible, it falls into a good space where I genuinely enjoy this game, but I have to say that while that rating is there, 3.5, it's a decent game, it's a good game, I like it, I do. But really, you have to know, if you are interested in this game, by all means pick it up. I think it's fun. But also, you have to know there are issues here. There are issues in this game. Between the rules, between the balance, between the way things are, the game length, there are a bunch of things holding this one back. I still enjoy it, but There's issues. There's issues. Yeah, there's issues here. Anyways, as far as other game recommendations, first of all, Lizard Wizard is going to be another game that builds upon this core concept of, like, multiple actions. Same thing as Raccoon Tycoon. Both of them build upon that core concept. They're a little heavier in what they do, and Lizard Wizard in particular does, once again, overstay its welcome, so I have that complaint against it. But if you like the idea of what Faeries and Magical Creatures is doing, I think Lizard Wizard is a natural next step to take, or Raccoon Tycoon for that matter. And if you're looking for another game of just building out your garden in a pure polyomino game, none of the other extra fluff, although I guess there's some extra fluff, but less of the extra fluff, then Cottage Garden from Uwe Rosenberg is going to be another game where you place little polyominoes onto small little boards to be able to get as many points as possible, and it's got, I think, cats, if I recall correctly. It's been a while since I played it, but I think it's got cats in it. There's some sort of creature, but I think it was cats. In any case, until next time, I'm Alex Radcliffe from Board Game Co. I hope you enjoyed this video, and as always, I hope you have a good one.